Daniel Moore's shift ended just after midnight, but he stayed seated in the small security booth long after the lights on the monitors dimmed. His phone rested in his hand, the screen glowing faintly in the dark. He didn't need to open the message again. He already knew what it said: payment required by tonight to continue treatment. Daniel closed his eyes and exhaled slowly. Across the city, in a sterile white room that smelled of disinfectant and quiet despair, his daughter Sophie lay asleep beneath thin hospital blankets. Tubes ran from her arm, machines hummed softly beside her bed. She was 10 years old, and she was fighting cancer with a bravery that terrified him. Earlier that evening, he had sat beside her bed pretending to read while she slept, afraid that if he stopped looking at her, something terrible would happen. Parents in nearby rooms whispered to doctors. Monitors beeped steadily. Every sound felt like a countdown. He locked the booth, slipped the keys into his pocket, and stepped out into the night. Rain had been falling for days, swelling the river that ran parallel to the road. The water moved fast and loud, reflecting broken streaks of streetlight. Daniel walked with his head down, his thoughts heavy with numbers, medical bills, because insurance gaps, debts he didn't know how to pay. He replayed the doctor's words from earlier that evening, calm and professional. "Mr. Moore, we'll need the payment cleared by tonight to proceed." Daniel had nodded then, pretending he understood how he was supposed to make that happen. He was so lost in thought that he almost missed the sound. A sharp splash. Another splash followed, violent, desperate. A short cry, cut off too quickly. Daniel's heart slammed into his chest. He ran. The riverbank was slick with mud, rain stinging his eyes as he reached the edge. In the dark, he saw a small shape thrashing weakly in the water, dragged by the current. A child. For a brief moment, Daniel hesitated, not from fear of the river, but from the weight of everything already breaking inside him. If he got hurt now, Sophie would have no one. The thought lasted less than a second. Daniel didn't think, he kicked off his shoes and jumped. The cold hit him like a blow, stealing his breath. The current fought him immediately, pulling at his legs, trying to take him under. He forced himself forward, arms burning, eyes fixed on the spot where the child disappeared beneath the surface. His hand brushed fabric. He grabbed and pulled upward with everything he had left. They broke the surface together. The child's body was limp, his head rolling against Daniel's shoulder. Daniel dragged him onto the bank and collapsed beside him. The boy wasn't breathing properly. His chest barely moved. His skin was cold, lips pale. Daniel's hands trembled, but his mind sharpened. He tilted the boy's head back, cleared water from his mouth, and placed his hands carefully on the small chest. He counted under his breath, steady and controlled, the way he had practiced years ago, while watching emergency medical videos late at night after Sophie's diagnosis, terrified he might one day need them. 1, 2, 3. He breathed into the boy's mouth. Once, twice. The boy coughed violently, water spilling out as his chest jerked upward. His eyes flew open, wide and terrified. He tried to scream, but no sound came. Shock had stolen his voice. But he was conscious, and he saw everything. Daniel let out a breath he didn't know he'd been holding. His knees shook as adrenaline drained from his body. For a second, he pressed his forehead to the wet ground, whispering a silent thank you to no one in particular. He pulled off his jacket, wrapped it tightly around the boy's small body, and lifted him into his arms. "You're okay," Daniel whispered, his voice breaking. "Stay with me. Just stay with me." No sirens came. The road was empty, the rain heavier now. So Daniel ran. Rain soaked them both as he carried the boy through empty streets, lungs burning, legs screaming. The boy clutched Daniel's shirt weakly, eyes fixed on his face, unable to speak, too traumatized to do anything but hold on. Daniel talked the entire way, not loudly, not clearly, but constantly, about breathing, about staying awake, about how everything would be fine even if he didn't believe it himself. The hospital doors burst open, doctors rushed forward. Nurses took the boy from Daniel's arms and placed him on a stretcher. As they wheeled him away, the boy turned his head. Their eyes met one last time. The boy didn't blink. A nurse stepped toward Daniel, clipboard in hand, asking for his name and contact information. Daniel nodded absently, but his focus drifted. Another hospital corridor filled his vision. Another bed. Sophie, pale, still. He heard the doctor's voice from earlier that evening. The payment needs to be cleared by tonight, Mr. Moore. His phone buzzed in his pocket. Missed calls from Sophie's hospital. Daniel's chest tightened. He looked down the hall once more. The boy was surrounded by doctors now, alive and breathing. Safe. I'm sorry, Daniel said quietly. He turned and ran, not away from responsibility, not from the truth, but toward the other place where a child needed him just as desperately. By morning, Daniel was sitting beside Sophie's bed, his hand wrapped around hers. He paid what little he could, signed what he could, and stayed until sunrise, whispering promises he prayed he could keep. Sophie stirred once, eyes fluttering open. "Dad? I'm here," he said immediately. "I'm not going anywhere." The other child survived. His name was Leo Hart. He was the only son of Margaret Hart, a billionaire businesswoman known across the world. Doctors told her plainly that if that man had arrived even minutes later, her son would not have lived. Margaret searched for him through police reports, witnesses, and cameras. Nothing. But Leo never forgot, not the face, not the voice that told him to stay alive when he couldn't speak. Years passed. Daniel worked nights, then mornings, then both. Sophie's cancer returned more aggressive. Bills piled higher. Hope thinned. Some days Daniel thought he was running on nothing but routine and stubbornness. Other days, he wasn't sure what kept him standing at all. Desperate, he took a second job as night maintenance and security at a massive corporate campus. He never looked up who owned it. He only needed the paycheck. One evening, during a company family event, a teenage boy froze mid-step. Across the room stood a man in a security uniform, older, thinner, but unmistakable. That face. That night, Leo told his mother, "Mom, I saw him, the man who saved me." Margaret investigated quietly through records and files, the night guard, the father, the rescuer. She decided he deserved more than silence and planned a public tribute, carefully, not for spectacle, but for gratitude. When the invitation reached Daniel, he almost declined. He had never wanted applause. But Sophie saw the envelope. "Can we go?" she asked softly. "I want to see the lights." So Daniel said yes. The hall was large and bright, filled with quiet conversation and anticipation. Daniel felt out of place immediately. Sophie held his hand, gripping tighter than usual. As speeches began, applause rolled through the room, then Sophie swayed, collapsed, motionless. Daniel caught her instantly, lifting her into his arms, as panic tore through him. Margaret saw everything. She followed as Daniel ran, carrying Sophie through endless hallways and into the night. At the hospital, doctors rushed in. This time, Daniel stood helpless, as someone else took his child from his arms. Margaret didn't hesitate. She signed papers, approved procedures, and covered every bill, every surgery, every treatment. Daniel waited through the night, hands clasped, counting seconds the way he once counted compressions. Sophie survived. There were no cameras when she recovered, and no speeches resumed. Margaret visited once, and said quietly, "You saved my son when he couldn't speak. Let me help your daughter live long enough to find her voice." Daniel nodded. Nothing more was needed. Some heroes are remembered by names, others are remembered by faces, and the lives they quietly carry forward when the noise fades.